It's obvious that you listen to this show to hear about and support other people's dreams. But what about yours? What is your dream project? I'm here to help you break through whatever is in the way of your dreams and get you to the finish line. Go to dreamingbigcoaching.com today and take the first step. Literally, it's a button you can click to sign up for a free consultation with me. Let's find out if I can help you reach your goal. Click on Take the First Step. It's that simple to start the rest of your life. Get coached by Rob Southgate at dreamingbigcoaching.com. Welcome back to Alley Chats, the podcast that features interviews with awesome creators you can find in artist alleys at cons from all over the world. You can follow Alley Chats on Facebook by searching for @AlleyChats. I plan to add other social media, but for now, that's the best place. You can send me an email directly to rob@alleychatspodcast.com. If you or anyone you know has a crowdfunding effort about to launch or currently going, send them my way as well. I have another podcast called Go Fund This, where I interview people with crowdfunding campaigns for comics, tabletop games, movies, really anything creative. I love to share cool projects and to help creative people reach their goals and make their dreams come true. You can connect with me via email directly at gofundthis@smgpods.com or send me an email through this show to rob@alleychatspodcast.com. Today's guest is Enrica Jang, the executive director of Poe House, to talk about the 5th annual Poe Visitor Awards and International Edgar Allan Poe Festival. Welcome to the show. I am so excited to have you here. We have a lot to talk about. I'm actually a big Poe fan. Even though we haven't told people what you're here for, I am. So right there, this would have been a great conversation, but there's so much more to this. Why don't we jump in first before we talk about what you're here for? Let's hear about you. What do you do? What's your journey? Give us a kind of a bio of Enrica.
A bio I was born now.
Oh, you can go back. You want to go back? In one of my past lives, I was...
No, my name is Enrica Jang. I'm executive director of Poe Baltimore and the Edgar Allan Poe House and Museum in Baltimore, Maryland. I've been with Poe now for about 6 years. Poe House in Baltimore is the last surviving home in the city where Poe and his family were known to have lived. I work for a nonprofit that stewards the house, maintains the house. We keep Poe's Chamber Door open to visitors from just about all over the world. Power of Poe. I'm really glad talking to a Poe fan. You're an excellent company. I feel like I'm an excellent company. But Poe Baltimore, as a nonprofit, we keep Poe House open. But the second part of our mission is to draw a direct line from Poe to the present day, share with people the outsized impact that Poe's had in popular culture, and really celebrate Poe's legacy in Baltimore and beyond. We are the home of the International Edgar Allan Poe Festival and Awards, the Saturday Visitor Awards, named for a prize that Poe won while he was living at Poe House at Amity Street in Baltimore. And so that's kind of our mission. And I was a Poe fan long before coming to Poe House, wrote comics inspired by Poe, anthologies inspired by Poe. So it's a little bit even how I got my job. When I was interviewing for the director's position, that they had seen, oh, you've written some books inspired by Poe on your resume. Do you think you could still sell bobbleheads in the gift shop? I'm like, I write comics. Of course I can sell. I can do, totally.
Right.
Big, huge fan. And that's how I got my job. So you have to really love Poe just to be in this world. And it's really, really cool. Power of Poe. Exciting.
Yeah, Power of Poe. Well, I wasn't kidding that I'm a fan. Poe was one of my early introductions into horror literature. And it was funny because we studied it in like junior high. We had to read The Raven in junior high. And, that's a great entry point. But before we had read that, I remember I had gotten a like anthology of Poe. I don't know if you remember this book. It was a big fat anthology that had kind of orange and black and gray on the cover. I've seen it. Like
we sell that one.
Okay.
We sell it in the gift shop.
Okay, when I come, I'm going to buy one because I lost mine years ago. I loved it. So when we got to the Raven, I was like, "Oh my God, I know the Raven!" And I actually remember, like, had it memorized by the time we learned it in junior high. So to me, it was like, "Oh yeah, let's talk about all the little pieces of it." Poe is one of those. I've been a lifelong horror fan, and I think it was Poe that was the entry point. I'll tell you specifically, this is going to be so rote, but the one that actually was the entry point that made me understand horror and its impact in a different way, like how I could view it through my lens, was The Telltale Heart. I mean, it is, to me, the perfect short story. And it's so funny that you say the impact today. I see that played out over and over and over, whether it's overt and it's like obvious, or you go, oh no, they're just doing The Telltale Heart again. You know, it's
definitely main horror influences today. You see their influences, Stephen King, lots and lots of references to Poe.
Lots of Poe,
Lovecraft, inspired by Poe. You see that just about everywhere. And so when people become aware of it, with those references, it's kind of fun, especially young people, when they sort of start to deconstruct the stories that they're more familiar with and sort of see, oh, where did this come from? And that's right. When you get them to like follow these lines and get them interested in the history, get them interested in literature. And it's definitely the stuff that keeps you awake in English class, right? Like at the very beginning, right. That horror is really exciting and everything. I have found as I've gone through, especially learning more about Poe's biography, but coming back to some of that literature, like I would have told you, yeah, I'm a Poe fan, but really going back to some of this stuff just by virtue of my job, but then you fall in love with it all over again. And you've experienced more of life and you see more of the loss and the fear and that pain that's part of it too. And so as much as that romantic gothic stuff is kind of cool and still churns stuff up, there is another layer to a lot of it, and coming to realize that a lot of people's impression of Poe is that he's this kind of like a victim of his gift and kind of this passive sort of a passenger, and this thing is driving him and just pouring out of him, when actually Poe is very much a master. He's doing a lot of this stuff on purpose. It's very intentional, constructing this stuff, and a lot of that goes into it. And so again, like part of the pleasure of being a historian at Poe House, sharing with people that, you know, he wasn't just this guy that happened to be dark and this thing pouring out of him. He's very deliberate, very much a master, and sharing with people that. And then there's the mystery side of it too. Poe is the father of the detective story. There was no, not that there were no such things as mysteries before there was an Edgar Allan Poe, but Poe is the first to create a character at the heart of a story whose job it is to solve a mystery by way of step-by-step reasoning, ratiocination, this step-by-step process. And so any mystery novel you've ever read, any police procedural you've ever seen on television, even animation like Scooby-Doo, has this line from Poe straight through to the present day. So sharing with people, it's a really fun part of this job.
Well, I also think it's interesting. Okay, so I'm a marketing guy. I love talking about the business side of it, and when I've thought about Poe in that respect, even the whole self-branding, like, yeah, you could make an argument that like he's kind of the original goth, right? But there was an element of branding to that too, and including all the mystery around his death and all the stuff. He's like the original conspiracy theory and the original goth guy, but that was all. I mean, yeah, some of it is natural and some of it is he understood, I live this character, I make this character. You know what I mean? To me, that was always fascinating, because as we've gotten into our lifetime here, our time frame, we see that people build their own brand and make themselves into this image or whatever. And it's easier to tell what's not pure and what is. And with Poe, I believe that, yes, he had an alcohol problem. And yes, he was macabre, but in reality, he also was playing into a type. It sold books, you know?
So he was asked point blank, why are you writing some of this really harsh stuff? And his very flippant answer was, it's going to sell.
Yeah.
Right. You're going to sell magazine subscriptions, and that's what we're doing. That's why we're doing it. More seriously, though, Poe, felt that literature should make you feel something powerful. Art should make you feel something powerful. And it should happen in one sitting, and it should be something that, makes you experience the full, life, this full breadth of life and emotion. And there's nothing more powerful than those primal emotions of love and fear and the contemplation of death and impending doom, this kind of thing. And so Poe's very much, again, intentional in that. And he feels very strongly about that and says so. There's a whole body of work that people don't read from Poe. He was a noted critic. One of those, almost the original hipster in a way, all the things you thought were cool about literature, he would explain to you why they were not cool and what you should be paying attention to instead. And he was noted for it, made enemies for it, which is where a lot of that conspiracy stuff happens at the end of his life. But he had such strong thoughts about literature. Much of what he taught about the short story, as you mentioned, is still taught today.
Right.
So all of that's still here. So sort of, again, revealing the lines to the present day, to the new generation, younger generation, where they can kind of follow the line back to Poe. It's very rewarding.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you're here. We're talking about what's coming up. You've got submissions for the 5th annual Poe Visitor Awards. And the Visitor Awards, I was reading about this. This is the name came from his first. Was it his first win when he submitted a short story or something? Or what? Tell me the story of the Visitor Awards.
Well, we have poetry dating back to Edgar Allan Poe's teens. One of those emo kids writing in a notebook. I'm not really making fun of him.
No, you're not. Hey, I've got
one of them. I'm still one of them. Not a teenager.
I've got one upstairs.
One of them. But writing in a notebook, and he even manages to self-publish some poetry. When he comes to Baltimore, though, he sees that there's a little bit of money perhaps to be made submitting short stories to the burgeoning magazine industry of the day. Sure. And some people don't actually know this. Poe had an older brother, Henry Leonard Poe, who was also a writer. And his brother introduces him to some of the literary community in Baltimore, which is a very important literary city. To this day, but very important literary city in Poe's day, 3rd largest city in the United States. So Poe sees there's a little bit of money to be made, submitting short stories, begins to do this, and he actually does achieve a little bit of success submitting these stories. He doesn't win some of these contests, but he gets published. And so it was very common that a lot of these contests would solicit these pieces from writers, publish them, not pay them, but still publish them in the content. And that still happens even to this day. But while Poe is living at Amity Street in Baltimore, he wins first prize for a story called Manuscript Found in a Bottle from the Baltimore Saturday Visitor. This is a periodical in Baltimore. He wins $50, a nice chunk of change.
Oh, wow, $50.
Struggling writer at this time. And some people don't realize Poe was one of the first American writers to support himself entirely by his pen. He has no family money to fall back on. He has no other career that he's pursuing. And so this is the first money that Poe receives professionally for his work. Money's always good when you're trying to be a pro. And this is the prize that kind of gets him noticed. The cachet of that first place prize gets him noticed by more of the literary community. He begins to network and parlays this eventually to his first job as an editor, and eventually moves on to Richmond to the Southern Literary Messenger. So that prize is pretty significant. That short story, very important. And you see, when you come to Poe House, you can see a list of the works that Poe wrote. Not necessarily the most famous of the works. Some of them have been adapted to screen, Berenice, Morella, this kind of thing. But a lot of fun, those stories. But you see the young writer at work. So the Poe Baltimore, when we were sort of conceptualizing the festival, really celebrating Poe's impact in literature around the world, we see visitors come to Baltimore. Baltimore really does embrace Poe. He's buried not very far from Poe House too, so we do see just people from everywhere, and we see an incredible breadth of work. And the idea was that Poe begins his professional writing career at Amity Street. We should be honoring the new generation of artists and writers who continue to be inspired by Poe. And that can come in just about any form. Like, Poe has been translated to languages all over the world. He's been adapted to screen, page, film, radio plays. You just have just about any medium, any genre where Poe has been adapted, or original works inspired by Poe. And so we start to see this really wonderful stuff. We really wanted to share this history, and then also continue this tradition of recognizing that incredible work. And so Baltimore Saturday Visitors were born, Saturday Visitor Awards, honoring a new generation of artists and writers inspired by Poe.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that when I was reading through some of the entries, it can be whatever medium, which I think is interesting. A lot of times when I see people doing something like this, it's like, we want short stories, or we want, only films. But you have film, you have audio, you have art, whatever was inspired by Poe. Man, there's got to be a lot that comes in, because I see his influence across so many different mediums. It's got to be just the greatest. As somebody who is a fan, I would love to see this.
We do see some really, really great stuff. And I see work being created out there that I wish people would submit for the awards, actually, because, again, as you say, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But we've had beadwork, we've had complete musical compositions, entire operas, we've seen plays, we've seen film scripts, we've seen short films, feature films, we've seen just about everything. And people do ask, how can you compare, for instance, a children's book to a film? Like, how does that work? And the through line is Poe. So the awards are offered in two categories. The first is adaptations of Edgar Allan Poe's life or works. So much more of the classical adaptations that we see, but people do get incredibly creative with this. But using Poe's life, or using Poe's actual words as the basis for the work, we would consider that adaptation. Whereas there's a second category, original works inspired by Poe. And there you see, maybe sequels, prequels. You might see Poe as a character. Poe as a pop culture icon. You see him showing up in, The Simpsons and South Park and
right.
Wednesday on Netflix and stuff. So Poe himself as a character is also sort of in this. And so that's where original works inspired by Poe, creative works that you see this through line to Poe, clearly inspired by Poe, but might be ahistorical in that way. That's that second category. But that's the through line. It's adaptations of Poe's works, original works inspired by Poe, but Poe is the through line there. And every year we have a different slate of judges, and we're very fortunate to pull in a number of different Poe, we call them Poe places. So the Poe Museum in Baltimore, the Poe Museum in Richmond, Virginia, there's a cottage in New York City. They participate in the awards, and then we've had representatives from different arts organizations, Poe Studies Association, on our slate of judges every year. And we do see just an incredible array of work, and that's just a really great part of my job, getting to see all of that stuff.
So they're oh boy, I had my pun and I can't get it out. Professionals? Professionals?
Professionals.
Professionals. Man, I had to work. Usually I can spit those out. That one was a tricky one.
Well, we do want to, that's actually a good, you can be a professional, but you can also be an amateur. So traditionally published or distributed works, those, of course, encouraged. But we also, again, this brave new world of social media and web. And as long as the work is out there for the public to see, it's out there for the world to see. It's not something that you can have created that nobody has ever seen before, and then you submit it for the awards. We're looking for Poe in popular culture, so you have to be part of
art that's in the world.
It's got to be in the world to do that. But it's a rolling basis. So anything within the last 3 years, if you're creating something this year, create it by the end of this year, post it. Traditionally, published works, but more crazy, wacky ways that you get Poe out in the world. We want to see it, and those can still qualify.
Yep. The submission is $25 per entry, and might as well say this: the fee for SVA submissions $25 per entry. Nominees will be given a ticket to the Black Cat Ball, a prize medal, and a Saturday Visitor Awards designation for their work. How cool would that be? You put out a short film, and when you put your landing page, you're like, I was part of the Visitor Awards. I mean, that to me is, well, okay, I'm a nerd. I would think that's the coolest thing. But you know what? I love it. I have an Instagram friend who is head of the Shirley Jackson Awards, and I nerd out about that every time. I'm always like, oh, it's so cool that his books have the Shirley Jackson Awards stuff on there, which is another one inspired by Poe. I mean, if you think about all the ghost stories, people are like, oh, Shirley Jackson's like, yeah, she's amazing. But come on, you tell me that's not inspired by some of that early work by Poe, that where he was telling these stories of death and
you can't read like The Lottery without the sharpness of that story.
Right.
And kind of think about like that kind of streak, that little streak in it. I think
House on Haunted Hill or Hill House, that one, the one that was adapted for Netflix. To me, that is just a sequel to Poe's work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to put this family here and I'm going to tell this story, and it's going to be shocking, and it's going to be in this world that maybe, where like I remember in school when we read Fall of the House of Usher, and the way it impacted the people that I was in class with. Some of them it's like, meh. But some of them it was like, that's all they could talk about was that impact. And like, what was this story? Like, it's not what I thought it was going to be when I went into it. That's what I loved about Poe, was it wasn't what you expected. It took you somewhere. And like you said, it's like the pebble in the ocean. Poe dropped a pebble and those ripples just don't end.
Good. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love it. Now you have a presenter. Rodney Barnes is going to be your presenter. Am I right?
Yes.
Guest of honor.
Really excited to have Sir Barnes coming out, and he is from Maryland. So we've been sort of teasing him. We're bringing him home, Annapolis, but close enough to Baltimore. Close enough.
I mean, you're eating the same crab, I'm sure.
But we know Rodney was very generous, agreeing to be our guest of honor and presenter at the awards this year. He's been, speaking just inspiring work and just an incredible array of genres that he's working on. My poor husband, who's not a literary fan, he's a sports guy, and he's really looking forward to getting to talk to Rodney about his HBO documentaries on the sports side of stuff. But I want to talk to him about the comics. And my favorite thing that I heard was that he's working on a Blackula adaptation.
What?
Super excited about that. So
what? I'm all in on that.
But the man's amazing. It's just an incredible array of work. And as a fellow Maryland creator, we just could not resist inviting him out. I'm really excited. He'll be out there in October.
Yeah. So if you're in the area, October 7th, right? That's when the ceremony is. If you're out there, this is.
Yeah. Poe Fest International is October 7th and 8th this year. Okay. The festival is a 2-day event held in the shadow of Poe House. 2 days of stage, vendors, food, music, performances, books, all celebrating Edgar Allan Poe. That event is free. It is an outdoor festival, street festival. And so anybody who might be on the East Coast wants to come out to Baltimore, especially kicking off the Halloween season. Super excited to have folks come out for that. And the awards nominees are announced in July and invited to come to the festival. And so if you come out, you'll be able to see their vendor tables if they choose to take us up on that. But then the award ceremony is held every year at the Black Cat Ball. That's our gala event, the official party of the festival. That is held at Westminster Hall. Black Cat Ball at Westminster Hall. And Westminster Hall is where Poe is, in fact, buried. So he tends to lurk in the back. He doesn't show his face at the party, but we know he's there. And
there are a lot
into
of
the building.
paranormal ghost stories about the ghost of Poe being out there. So,
oh yes, lots and lots of them. But
leave a glass of red wine on the table.
Spirit every year, and it is. We always have the festival on the closest anniversary to his death anniversary. So he died October 7th, 1849. Trivia question there, and that's when we have the festival, and it's sort of commemoration and a recognition too that Poe's death is still a mystery to this day. And that is one of the enduring fascinations of Poe's story. And as people are coming out to honor Poe, having a festival in his honor on his death anniversary seemed like a really coal thing.
It is. It's super cool. So anyone that wants to submit, I will put links in the show notes. It's PoeFestivalInternational.com, Saturday Visitor Awards. Just saying it's not going to help you out. I guess I should do it. PoeInternationalFestival.com/Saturday-Visitor-Awards. But I'm going to put it in the show notes. So it's a link you can click on if you have something to submit. This is where you do it. Submission deadline is May 30th. So don't miss it. If you've got something cool, get it in there. And if you can make it October 7th, October 8th for this Poe Festival, I mean, oh my gosh, my mind is racing. Like, how do we get out there for this? How do we make something happen? Because this is so cool to me. I just absolutely love it. And the chance to maybe meet Rodney Barnes and talk to Rodney Barnes sounds really cool too. I'm not a sports guy, so we'll be talking about Philadelphia. We will not be talking about the Lakers, but
the Lakers, yeah.
Something for everybody, right? So one more question here. Pale Blue Eye, what did you think of it?
Oh, man. Well, I can watch Christian Bale do just about anything. And of course, it helped that Pale Blue Eye happens to be one of my absolute favorite books.
Right. Did you think the adaptation was cool?
Complicated. I'm a reader. To do what I do, I have to be a reader. So there's always the book was better, like
yeah, of course,
element of it, like that has to be. But I loved what they did. I loved Harry Melling as Poe. Harry Potter fan notwithstanding, I had seen Harry Melling in A Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and crazy, like haunted performance. And so when I heard he was going to be Poe, I was intrigued. Just very, very cool.
Great choice. Yeah.
Another thing I really loved about the movie, that Poe is always depicted as an old man, which is hilarious to me because he died at 40.
Right.
And he was a very young man when he's writing these works that are still with us and still haunt us. And so for Poe to be perceived, he looked a little rough at the end of his life. There's no question about that. But at the same time, very young man. Writing these things, and so to see this young Poe at West Point was also just amazing. If people aren't familiar with the story, the idea is that Poe, as a cadet at West Point, is helping to solve a murder that has happened at the brand new academy. And I used to live up close to West Point, New York. We used to work at West Point. And so it was just incredible. All those touchstones for me. So I'm a terrible person to ask because I love all those things about it. You're the exact
person to ask.
But the book made me ugly cry. There are books that'll make me cry, but that particular book made me ugly cry. And so we were actually very, very fortunate to have the author, Louis Bayard, as our first guest of honor for the Saturday Visitor.
Oh, cool.
Meet your heroes. Like, don't care what they say. You do want to meet your heroes. And it was wonderful to meet him as an author and to see that book be turned into this beautiful film, which is just super exciting. But it's been an embarrassment of riches this year because you had Pale Blue Eye, the adaptation that came out like early in the year. Wednesday, the new Addams Family series that came out. Not based on Poe, but Poe is all over.
Oh, are you kidding me?
That Nevermore Academy, the Poe statue, like the whole thing. And so like I have adored that. And I was just getting every day, my phone was just like constantly almost like a
Well,
Like, oh,
it definitely built
like,
awareness.
Have you watched Wednesday? Have you watched Wednesday? Have you watched Wednesday?
Yeah.
Yes, I watched. I loved Wednesday. And then later this year, supposedly, I hope they'll release it this year, but there's going to be a House of Usher adaptation by Mike Flanagan, who's from Maryland. And
I'm a
Luke
big Mike
Skywalker's
Flanagan
gonna be
fan.
in it.
I'm a big Mike Flanagan fan. In fact, talk about like when I said I have this Instagram friend, Mike Flanagan is a Twitter friend of mine. He would have no idea who I am, but he does respond when I write. He responds to me, and I've been a fan of his. When I saw the one with Karen Gillan, Oculus, it was like one of his first movies, and we just tried it and we're blown away. And then he became, then he started doing the Netflix stuff. I mentioned Hill House, and I'm like, oh my God. And then Midnight Mass was a Poe story in my mind. I watched that and I'm like, okay, he's a Poe fan. Because it had that vibe, even though it's vampire, it had that vibe. Yeah.
But he's also from Maryland, so hey,
I didn't know that.
Talk to your friend, Mr. Flanagan. Tell him we're waiting to hear from him next year for the Saturday Visitor Awards. But we super excited, and Luke Skywalker is going to be in it. Mark Hamill's going to be in.
Oh, I know. I saw that. I didn't read the article about it. I saw Mike Flanagan was going to be working with Mark Hamill. Oh my God, you just made my whole day.
Tell him, we're waiting.
House of Usher is so good too. Oh my God.
I believe they're doing several stories, like an adaptation at
like an anthology film
style. Yeah, I think, but I'm just hungry for any news about that. So it's been a great year already.
Oh yeah.
Oh, in popular culture. And then, this past weekend, Austria's their entry for Eurovision. There's a song called "Who the Hell is Edgar?" and there's a whole dance that goes with it. Taya and Freya, and they entered that song for Eurovision. So Poe is everywhere, and I
have a feeling that song is going to make it to the ball, right? The Black Cat Ball.
We're working on a team to do the dance with us. So.
Oh my God! Well, Enrica, this was a real pleasure. I can't encourage people to check this out enough. They have to check it out, and if you have something to submit, $25 entry fee. This would be a really cool thing to put on your stuff. It's got my mind racing. I think I'm going to try to have something out in pop culture for next year. So after I read this, I'm like, I have a short film that I wrote. We just had a conversation about doing short films yesterday. That is a spoiler. It's got a little bit of the Telltale Heart in it, but
deadline for this year is May 30th. But the awards again are offered on a rolling basis, and call for entries will open for 2024 on Poe's birthday in January.
Okay. So I've got a clock ticking. I've got to try to make something happen and get it out there.
Get it out in the world before December 31, and then we slam the door. But.
Enrica, is there someplace you want to send people for social media where they can either connect with you or they can check out the Poe Awards?
Well, definitely check out Poe House. You can find us at Poe Baltimore, Twitter, Facebook, but find the Edgar Allan Poe House and Museum in Baltimore. We'd love to see you. Tours offered weekly. And then PoeFestInternational.org. You will find everything about the festival this year. Of course, we're still building our program, so more and more general admission tickets will go on sale July 1. Now, again, that festival is a free event. We have additional tours and Black Hat Ball and all that other stuff. But if you want to just come out and have a good time for free with fellow Poe freaks, please come on out, have a good time. And there's something for everybody. So PoeFestInternational.org.
Now, we didn't talk about this, but I'm going to invite you back on at some point in the future to talk about your comics. You said you have a history of comics. So I'm going to have you back on just to talk about comic books. But today I wanted to really focus on Poe. I
we don't cross the streams. We don't cross.
Yes.
Even though comics got me my job, and I'm very, very proud of that. But
today it had to be focused on Poe, and it makes me. You know what? It's funny because my other big Poe love is the Hammer films, and it got me. As we're talking, I'm like, oh dear God, I've got my Hammer collection. I think I might have to pop some on today. It's Halloween somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Well, not to make this even just more fun. We do have a Poe and Comics exhibit planned for this year at the festival.
Oh, do you?
This is even more of a reason to come on. This is a no-brainer. Get your tickets now. Come on out to Baltimore.
For Poe and Comics, are you looking for people to submit comics that they've featured Poe in?
We are putting together the exhibit now.
Okay, because I'm going to think about it. I know so many comic artists and writers, and
love it.
I've got a guy that I'm thinking of. I think he may have done a whole issue of Poe stuff. If he did, I'm sending him your way.
Please. We have some of the Corbin works. Excuse me, some of the Wrightson pieces. We're really excited.
Oh my God, the Wrightson stuff is so good.
We wish we had the originals, but we'll be able to show some of the pieces we have there. Poe Museum in Richmond did a Poe Comics exhibit about 15 years ago, and as you very well know, quite a bit has happened with Poe and comics in the last 15 years. So we're going to see a lot of that in this exhibit, and it's just talking about crossing the street. It's just one of those things that just flowed together this year.
Yeah.
So
great.
Coming out.
What a great time to be in charge of Poe House. That's so amazing. All right. Well, Enrica, thank you so much for coming on. And everybody, check this out. Follow the links. Submit if you can. And if not, go to this Poe Festival. It's going to be just awesome. I'm so happy you came on. Enrica, good luck with all this, too.
Thank you. See you in Baltimore.
Thanks again for sharing about the International Poe Festival, and I hope you get some incredible submissions for the Poe Visitor Awards from our audience. How amazing would that be? You can find a link to the International Edgar Allan Poe Festival and any links we discussed in the show notes. If you or anyone you know wants to guest on Alley Chats, send them my way. You can connect with me through the Alley Chats Facebook page or via email directly at rob@alleychatspodcast.com. Alley Chats is a production of Southgate Media Group, hosted, edited, and produced by me, Rob Southgate. Thanks so much for listening to Alley Chats.